Ms. MacNeill, if you will come forward here to the clerk's desk first. Please raise your right hand and take an oath.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in the case now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you. Please be seated right here and respond to counsel's questions.
Good morning.
Morning.
Will you please state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Rachel Renee MacNeill, MacNeill.
And can I call you Rachel?
Yes.
Rachel, what city do you reside in presently?
Salt Lake City.
Do you recognize this man sitting right here
Yes.
with the blue tie?
Yes.
Who is he?
It's my father.
If the record would reflect the identification of the defendant, Your Honor.
You stipulate?
Yes, Your Honor.
Record will so reflect.
If I can approach the witness.
You may.
I'm actually going to hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 35. Do you recognize what that is, Rachel?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's a picture of my mother,
And what's her name?
Michelle Marie MacNeill.
When's the last time you recall seeing your mother?
Easter, 2007.
Okay. Is that a photograph of your mother?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate photograph of your mom, what she looked like?
What she looked like?
That is a picture
That's
of your
my
mom,
mother.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, the State offers Exhibit 35.
No objection.
35 is received.
If I might publish it on this easel.
You may. I don't think it needs to stay on the easel throughout the trial. If you'd just like to publish it to the jury at this time, they can look and then.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
The record should reflect that the exhibit has been published to the jury and is received. 35.
I'm going to ask you a few questions about your relationship with your father. First off, let me just ask you about the family generally. Do you have siblings?
Yes.
And who are your siblings, and where do you fall in the order of your brother and sisters?
I'm the eldest. So it's Rachel, Vanessa, Alexis, Damien, and my sisters, Noelle, Giselle, Elle, Sabrina, and Ada.
Okay. Are all of your siblings biological to you?
No, they are not.
Okay. Describe a little bit more about the family dynamics.
The biological children, Rachel, Vanessa, Alexis, and Damien, and Noelle, Elle, Giselle, Sabrina, they were adopted, and Ada is adopted as well.
Okay. So there's
My biological niece.
So you have she's a biological niece, you say?
Yes.
Speaking of Ada?
Yes.
And how does Ada fit as far as a biological niece?
My sister Vanessa, it's her daughter.
Vanessa's your younger sister?
Yes.
Okay. So Vanessa's the biological mother of Ada?
Yes.
And you say Ada was adopted by your parents?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you a few questions about your relationship with your father growing up. You're the oldest daughter.
I am.
How close would you describe your relationship with your dad growing up?
Very close.
And why would you say that?
Growing up, my father was my best friend. I just we had a close.
Very, very close to your dad.
It's close to my dad, yes.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions about your mom, Michelle. Describe your relationship with your mom growing up.
We're a close family. My mom, I was closer to my father than my mother growing up.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to take you to a specific date. Okay, Rachel?
Mm-hmm.
We also have some Kleenexes up there if you need them. I'm going to take you to the date of April 11th, 2007. Do you recall that date generally?
Yes.
Okay. Where were you living at that time?
I was living in Salt Lake City.
In Salt Lake City?
Yes.
So you had moved out from the home. Do you remember how old you were approximately?
When I moved out from the home?
Sure. How old were you when you moved away from the home?
16.
16?
And
Okay.
I moved back at different times, but that's when I went to BYU.
Okay.
Moved out then.
Back in April 11th, 2007, was there a family home, a MacNeill family home, where your parents lived?
My parents lived there, yes.
And where was that?
And I don't
In
remember
what
the
city?
exact
What
address.
city was that in?
In Pleasant Grove.
Pleasant Grove, okay. Did you visit that home on occasion?
I did, but that was, I mean, they'd been there just a year.
They'd been there just a year, okay.
When
And do you know where did they live prior to that?
19 West, 620 South, Orem, Utah.
So they were in Orem before that?
Yes.
Okay. And how old were you on April 11th, 2007? Do you remember about how old you were?
Yes. 27?
27 years old. So you had been away from the house for some time, the family home.
Yes, I'd never lived in the Pleasant Grove home.
Okay. On that day, do you remember hearing that your mother died?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember where you were when you heard about that?
Yes.
Where were you?
I was driving on my way to our family home. I was at work. I'd left my cell phone at home, and I went to, when I got home, I saw that I had quite a few missed calls from my father. So I jumped in my car, gave him a call, and
Remember what time of day this was approximately?
I don't.
Okay.
It was later on. I got home from work a little later than normal. It was about 5-something, possibly.
5 o'clock or so in the afternoon?
Somewhere around there.
Okay. So you noticed you had some missed calls from your father?
Mm-hmm.
And you placed a call to him?
Yes.
What happened?
Well, I couldn't get a hold of him at first. I listened to the voicemail, and
Do you remember what the voicemail said?
yes.
What did it say?
It was my father's voice. He said, "Rachel, quick, get to the hospital. It's your mother. Quick."
What did you do when you heard that voicemail?
That's when I called him again, and when I did get a hold of my father, I said, what's happening? Is everything okay? And he just said, Rachel, come home. Well, I asked, what's wrong? What's wrong? Is Mom okay? And he said, Rachel, come home. He hung up on me. He wouldn't tell me anymore. I called back. I called Alexis then, and Alexis said that she was home. Oh.
Sustained.
We'll move along.
Right.
Did you, in fact, go home?
I did.
Okay. And that was the Pleasant Grove home?
Yes.
Do you remember about what time you arrived? Approximately?
6 something, possibly.
Okay.
No.
Did you
later.
go inside the house?
Right away.
Okay, right away.
Yes.
Tell the jury what you observed inside the house.
There were some people that were in my home, neighbors. There's some people that were in the kitchen. I right away went to look for my mother. I mean, my father.
Okay.
Sorry. I wanted to make sure he's okay.
Okay. Did you find
Yes.
your dad?
Yes.
You remember where he was?
Yes.
And where was that?
He was in my parents' room. He was sitting on the couch. He was there.
Okay. Do you recall, was there any other family members at the house when you went home?
Alexis was there.
Okay. Do you recall anyone else from the family that was there?
No.
Okay. You mentioned that you went to find your dad, and you
Yes.
found him in his room.
Yes.
Did you speak to him?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, what did you speak to him about?
I just went to hug him and comfort him. And
Okay. Did at some point your dad take you into the bathroom or describe what he
that was,
observed with
Yes,
respect to your mom?
yes, he, when Alexis was there as well in the room, he wanted to tell me what happened and, well, wanted to talk about what had happened to my mother.
Okay.
And knowing that she had died, that to me was not something I wanted to do. My dad was adamant that he describe what happened.
And when you say what happened, what he observed with respect to your mom?
Yes.
Okay. So what happened next?
When Alexis was there, or right when I walked in? Or what time?
When your dad was talking to you about wanting to show you what happened.
Okay. I told him that I didn't want to know. He insisted. I stood back. And
At this time, are you still
watched and listened to.
So you mentioned that you
told
were in a
us.
master bedroom, correct?
Yes.
And where did he take you, or where did he go in discussing
He went
this?
into the bathroom.
Into the bathroom.
Yes.
Do you know where the bathroom is in relationship to the master bedroom?
Yes, it was to the right.
Okay. Was it just right off the bedroom? The
Yes.
bathroom was? Okay. I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 30. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that, Rachel?
That's my My parents' bathroom.
Okay. Is that where your father took you to show you something?
Yes, I stood where the doors are.
Okay.
I didn't,
In relationship to that photograph, where would the doors be?
right here is where it closes. So
So for the record, Your Honor, the witness is pointing to the bottom part of the photograph.
She is.
Is that the view of the bathtub and the bathroom as you're essentially standing in the doorway going into it?
yes,
Okay. What did your father do inside the bathroom?
he physically showed step by step how he found my mother and talked about Ada. First finding my mother, he kept repeating that Ada was ruined. She was ruined.
Okay.
And then walked through where he said he found my mother and how
Okay. Who was present? You mentioned your dad.
Alexis
Yourself.
was present.
Alexis was also present.
Yes.
I'm going to have you help us describe what your father showed you. If we could have the witness come down, Your Honor.
If you would step down, please.
Do you need to take a break?
Yes, please. Or, yeah, that would be.
Have a seat here for just a second. Counsel, will you approach the bench? Few minutes. I think, why don't we just have you stay here? Ms. MacNeill, you may step down. If you'll just head this direction, you can take the break that you need. Why don't we just make this a stretch break for just a couple of minutes? We're back on the record. We've not gone off the record, I don't think. In State versus MacNeill, Mr. MacNeill is present with his attorneys. Counsel are present. The jury remains seated. Mr. Grunander, you may continue. Ms. MacNeill is on the stand and under oath.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to move on at this point with our discussion. Okay, Rachel?
Okay.
Following what you were about to describe
Yes.
with respect to your father and the bathtub,
Yes.
did you stay at the home that afternoon and evening?
Yes.
Okay. Did you stay the night at the home as
Yes.
well? Okay. Did you ever speak to your dad after the demonstration in the bathtub?
Yes.
Okay. Did he ever make any comments to you about a police investigation?
Yes.
Can you describe where you were in the house and what that conversation was?
I was in my father and mother's room.
And do you recall who else was there?
I was there.
You were there?
Yes.
Okay.
And my father was very concerned about getting an autopsy done right away. And
You remember what he said?
he said, he just kept repeating that he needed to get the autopsy done. We needed to get it done right away. I said, why do we need to get it done right away? I mean, it didn't make sense to me. He said that, and there were several neighbors that were come. There were knocks at the door, and he was jumpy when there were.
Did you ever ask him why he said he needed an autopsy to be done?
He wanted to he specifically said to me that he was concerned that there'd be a police investigation, that he didn't want anyone to think that he murdered my mother.
Okay. Did you have something else to add to the last question?
It was so shocking to me. I said, why? Why would anybody think that? Why would anyone think that?
Okay. And what did he say?
I don't remember.
This conversation took place in the bedroom, the master bedroom?
Yes. Oh.
And was this on the afternoon or evening of April 11th, 2007?
Yes, it's the evening.
So during the evening of the day your
2007.
mother died?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever find anything of your mother's that had been discarded?
Yes. Yes.
And when was that? As far as what day was that?
It was April 11th, 2007.
Okay. And where was that you found items of your mother's discarded?
Objection, Your Honor, this is leading, and she hasn't testified that anything's been discarded.
Overruled. She said she did find something that had been discarded. Go ahead.
Where was this?
It's in the garage.
In the garage?
Yes.
What did you find in the garage? There was a bed that my mother had after she'd gotten her surgery done, and there was nothing that was in the room. Everything was in the garage. There were little stuffed animals and that my sisters had given her. And let me stop you for just a moment. This bed that you're describing, where was this bed in the house? Where was it?
It was in my parents' bedroom. It wasn't there when I got there.
Okay, so the bed was gone.
Yes, there was nothing.
And you mentioned there
There.
were some other items along with this bed. What were those items?
Towels, a lot of towels, and sheets, little stuffed animals. A big. There was a running suit of my mother's, the garments,
Okay.
and it was just
You mentioned some stuffed
wet
animals.
and bloody.
What were these stuffed animals?
Little gifts that my little sisters had given my mother.
Did you find those?
It was just a big pile of everything was just thrown. It was a big bloody mess. It was just all of these things were just thrown in the garage.
Okay.
And I got my mother's things. I found them. I took them to my father.
And when you say things, what were the things, as you recall?
It was her garments and running, a dark blue running suit thing that she wore.
Okay. You gathered that up, you said, and you took them to your father?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened next?
He told me, "How dare you show me those things? Get rid of it."
What did you do with them?
I washed them. I washed my mother's things.
The clothing that you spoke of, you washed them?
Yes.
Okay. And then what did you do with them after that?
Put them in a bag and kept them. And then turned them over to.
Did you ultimately turn them over to investigators?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move ahead just a little bit. Rachel, what were you doing? Were you working at this time when your mom
Yes,
died?
I was.
Okay. And where were you working?
I was working in Salt Lake as a dental assistant.
Dental assistant. Do
Time.
you remember how long you had that job?
Not very long. A few months at most.
Okay.
A month or two.
Did the circumstances of your job change when your mom died?
Yes.
And in what way?
I quit my job.
You quit your job.
Yes.
And why did you quit your job?
Because my father said we needed to get a nanny, and it didn't make sense to me because Alexis was going to be home. She was always home. Her school was almost done with, and so I said that I would make sure that the kids were taken care of, driven to ballet and school and things.
When did this conversation with your father take place?
April 11th, 2007.
April 11th. Okay.
Yes.
And when
The
did
day I
you?
quit my job.
That's the day you quit your job?
Yes, I called that night and left a voicemail. Quit my job.
Okay. Did you talk to your dad about quitting your job?
Yes.
What did he say about that?
Don't you dare do that.
Did he explain why he didn't want you to quit your job?
He said that he didn't. He said that we just needed to go on with our life, and he needed to find someone to take care of the children.
Okay, you mentioned a nanny a minute ago. Was there discussion of a nanny on that day when you talked to your father?
Yes.
Okay. Did you return to live home at the home in Pleasant Grove after your mom's death, or did you continue to live in Salt Lake?
I continued to live in Salt Lake, but I did stay at the home after my mother's death. Occasionally.
Okay. Was there a continued conversation with your father about getting a nanny?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to fast forward a few days after your mother's death. Did you and your father get together for some kind of a special event to try and determine the issue of a nanny?
Yes. My father was adamant that we go to the temple to pray about getting a nanny.
Okay, when you say temple, what do you mean by temple?
I don't understand the question.
Location of the temple,
American Fork?
American Fork Temple.
Yes.
Okay. And do you know when your father talked about going to the temple and praying about it?
It was right away, very soon after my mother's death.
Okay.
Oh,
Did you in fact go to the temple?
yes.
Okay. Do you remember when that was?
I believe that it was on Tuesday. My mother funeral was 3 days after her death.
And what day was the funeral and what day of the week?
Saturday.
Okay. So it was the Tuesday after the funeral?
Yes.
Okay. And just describe for the jury the circumstances of getting to the temple, how you got there, and if you met your father there, what happened?
My father went to work, so he said he'd meet me at the temple. I drove and parked close to where my mother's funeral was held at the Stake Center there. I walked into the temple, and
Did you meet your dad at the temple?
I did. I met him there. We went inside. We ran into some neighbors, and he commented on how unusual that was. And I said, well, I mean, he lived down the street, so I didn't think that was unusual at all. Somebody from the ward. And I thought we were going to do a endowment session.
Okay.
Instead, we did.
When you went into the temple, did you expect to spend some time with your father and speaking to your father?
Yes.
Okay.
And instead, he wanted to do initiatory, so we went our separate ways, and he said just to meet outside, or not, just to meet after.
Okay. So ultimately, when you went into the temple, you were separated from your father.
Yes, there's.
And the plan was to get back together when?
After we'd done the initiatories.
Okay. What happened next? Did you in fact go in the temple and
Yes, we were in the
worship?
temple, and I went to the side where I go by myself and do that. And afterwards, I went to walk out to try to find my father.
Okay.
And he wasn't in the temple. And I looked everywhere there in the area there, walked out, went to the right, got into my car. I thought maybe he'd gone back to work, since that was right across the street.
Okay. What did you do next?
I went to go look for him and drove. I then, because you don't have your cell phone on in the temple. And so I went to go see if his car was anywhere. I then got a...
Did you drive by his work?
Yes.
Did you see his car there?
No.
Okay. What did you do next?
I tried calling him, or he called me. I'm not quite sure as far as the phone call goes.
Okay. But you did
Don't
make
recall.
contact with him on the phone?
Yes.
And what happened? What did
He was very upset. he said, Rachel, we were supposed to meet. Where are you? I said, well, you weren't in the temple. He said, I'm outside. There's no way you could have missed me. I didn't know he would be outside the temple. If we went, I mean, he told me we were going to the temple to pray for Nanny. I've never sat outside.
Okay.
It's just,
So
we do things in the temple.
What did you do? What did you do next?
I went back, and my father was very upset, so I had apologized, and he said he was on the bench that was outside. Said there was no way I could have missed him, but I'd gone out the other way anyway. So I went to go speak with him. I sat down, and after I apologized again, and
So you were talking to your dad?
yes,
Okay. Did the issue of a nanny come back up when you were speaking to him?
yes.
And what was said?
Well,
Or what
so
happened?
I said we started to discuss about a nanny, and a woman walked up,
Okay.
and right away. And
Remember where this woman came from, the direction?
she came from,
Coming from the temple or?
well, we were sitting outside on this bench this way, and she came from the parking area.
Okay. And did she approach you, or describe what happened when this woman walked up?
She approached us. She said, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I was at the funeral. My father said, oh, thank you. What's your name? I'm sorry. Oh, she said, oh, my name is Jillian. And my father said, I am so sorry. I've got to excuse myself. I've got to go to the restroom.
Okay, so your father left.
Yes.
And what happened next?
This woman kept talking to me. She said that, oh, you look like a nurse. Your father told me you're interested in nursing school. I'm going to this nursing school. She kept just talking to me about nursing things, and I was not.
How did you react to what she was saying?
I wasn't interested at all. I told her that I was just trying to breathe. My mother just passed away. I'm sorry that I just really couldn't talk. And she just continued and stayed there. She said that she had information right in her car. And I just wanted her to go away, but
How long were you there with this woman, Jillian, after your father left?
I remember just feeling like, what in the world's gone on with my dad? He's been in the bathroom for a while, so I'm not sure of the exact timing,
Okay.
but she just kept talking.
Did he return, your father?
Yes, he did.
Okay, what happened when he returned?
He asked her what her name was again,
Okay.
and she said, my name's Jillian, and because she started talking to the nursing school, and he said, oh, that's wonderful. We should get that information. Can I get your phone number?
So your dad asked her for her phone number?
Yes.
What did he do anything physically when he was asking for the phone number?
He typed her phone number in,
Into what?
his cell phone.
His cell phone?
Yes.
Okay.
And then she mentioned that she had the information, and I said that I wasn't interested. She left.
So she ultimately left.
Yes.
What happened next?
My dad said, oh, seems really nice, but what's her name again? I said, Jillian, Dad. And he said, well, maybe we should call her and go to lunch. I said, I thought we were here to talk about getting a nanny.
Okay.
And he yelled at me. He said,
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Yeah, go ahead.
What's been marked as State's Exhibit number 18. You recognize what that is?
yes.
And what is that?
That's Gypsy Jillian Willis.
Okay. You say Gypsy Jillian.
Er,
What is Gypsy's relationship to the temple incident that you just described?
That's the woman that came up to me at the temple and spoke with me, my father.
Was that the first time you had ever seen this woman? What, at the temple?
At the temple?
Was that the first time you remember seeing her?
I thought I'd seen her at the funeral.
Okay. Had you seen her any other time?
I thought I'd seen her at the Utah State Developmental Center,
Okay.
but I wasn't sure.
Okay. When's the next time you saw her, Gypsy Jillian Willis, after the American Fork Temple?
The day my father had her move in as the nanny, he called and said he was putting a lock on her door, that he didn't want this woman to feel uncomfortable, that there was a man in the house, and he wanted...
Responsive.
Sustained.
Do you remember, so you saw this woman when she came into the home as the nanny. Do you remember when that was in relationship to your mom's death, approximately?
I don't remember the exact date.
Remember approximately? Was it 2 or 3 weeks or
Oh,
after the death?
it was very shortly after my mother's death. So just maybe 2 weeks, if not less,
Okay.
not more than that. A
And you-
week.
Okay. And you recall seeing her at the home when she was moving in?
Well, I came in after she moved in. My father was saying that he wanted me to show her around.
And this was right, was this on the day she moved in or shortly after?
Yes, he said that it was the day she moved in.
Okay. You were talking about a conversation you had with or some statements your dad made to you about a lock. When did that take place?
The day that she moved in. And that's why he wanted me to come down so she'd feel comfortable, because there was a man in the house. He didn't want her to feel like that he was a threat to her.
Okay. You describe Gypsy moving in as the nanny. Mm-hmm. Did you see her function as the nanny?
As a nanny,
Yes.
she didn't do anything that I'd seen related to the children. I mean,
What did you expect to see?
I expected her to be focused on the children.
Okay.
I expected her to do things related to that, to cook or clean or take care of the children.
And what did you see her doing?
My dad was cooking. She was sitting there staring at my dad, things like that. I mean, the children were taking care of themselves, or Ada was left alone. She's running down this sidewalk. I mean, there was nobody looking after the children. It was very, very different than it was when my mother was there. I mean, there was Ada wasn't allowed to just ride her bike down the sidewalk by herself. Nobody's looking.
Sustained.
Backing up just a little bit. Was Gypsy Willis hired as the nanny?
She was hired as the nanny.
Okay.
So-
Are you familiar with the process that she underwent to be hired as the nanny?
My father asked me to come to a meeting,
And when would this
family meeting,
when would this have been as far as in relationship to your mom's?
very shortly after we had gone to the temple.
Okay.
He said that he'd put up flyers and different at the Institute building in Orem, and that he wanted us to, well, he said that Alexis was no longer to be a member of the family, that she was, that she,
And what does this have to do with the nanny situation or the hiring of a nanny?
that Alexis,
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled as to hearsay. Can you focus the question?
Yes. What did the defendant say, your father, about the hiring of a nanny and Alexis's role or lack of a role?
he said that Alexis thought he was having an affair with this woman, that my mother had thought that he was having an affair with this woman, and that that was ridiculous, and that if Alexis was going to be that way, that she was no longer a member of the family. He said that we were to interview.
We approach.
No, sustained.
Okay. What role did you play, if any, in the hiring of this nanny, of Gypsy Willis as a nanny?
My father wanted us to interview and for this nanny. And upon hearing that Alexis was no longer a member of my family,
Alexis was no longer taking
I
part.
said,
Your Honor, I'm going to move to strike that.
The objection is sustained. I'd like you to listen carefully to the question and just answer that question.
Okay. What role did you play? Okay. Did you play a role in the hiring of Gypsy Willis as a nanny?
I said, if Alexis is not,
Just yes or no?
No.
Did you play a role?
I refused.
Okay, so you refused. Thank you. Did at some point you become aware that the relationship between your father and Gypsy Willis was something more than a nanny?
Yes.
Okay. Without getting into the specifics, approximately when did you become aware of that?
It was very apparent just shortly after my mother's death.
And why do you say that?
It just was obvious that she's just goo eyes at my dad and wasn't doing anything a nanny would do. And we had a family prayer
Okay. When was the family prayer, would you say?
the day that I,
Okay. We'll move on from here. Okay. Did at some point you have a conversation with your dad this is prior to your mother's passing, so prior to April 11th, 2007?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever have a conversation with your dad about his will?
yes, it was bizarre.
What's your objection?
It's irrelevant. And this is 404B evidence.
Will you approach, please?
Yes.
You have mail.
Okay, Rachel,
Yes.
listen very carefully to my question, okay? And only respond to the questions I ask you, okay? We're talking about a conversation you had with your father before your mother's death about changing his will, okay? Did you have a conversation with your dad about that? Where he talked about
He talked
amending
about
his will?
his will, what was in his will.
Okay. Who was present when there was this conversation?
I was there, Alexis, my mother.
Okay.
Him.
Was Damien there?
I don't recall.
Okay. What did your father say at that time about his will?
He wanted to go over everything in his will. He said that Alexis would be made the, forgetting the correct term for it.
Executor?
Yes.
Okay.
If anything were to happen. And my mom,
Was your mom present for this?
she was, and he kept referring to Alexis and Alexis being in charge of this and that. And my mom said, well, what about
I'm
me?
going to stop you right there. I'm not asking you what your mom said, okay?
Okay, I'm sorry.
So just,
We're going to move to strike that.
So your objection is hearsay? Is that correct?
Yes.
It's non-responsive. It will be stricken as to what Michelle MacNeill said. Go ahead.
okay. So just what did your father say?
He went over that Alexis would be in charge upon death.
Okay. And this was in the presence of your mother.
Yes.
Did he do anything else? Did he offer anything to you as children during this meeting?
He gave us $5,000.
And who did he give the $5,000 to?
It was to, well, Damien, me, Alexis.
Okay. Did he say why he was giving you the $5,000?
No, it was very unusual. He'd never done anything like that before, ever.
Objection, non-responsive.
Overruled, she may answer. Can you clarify, was the gift of $5,000 to all three of them, or was it $5,000 each? What does that mean?
Yes. Did he give each of you $5,000?
Yes.
Okay. And had he done something like this before?
Never. Never.
Did he ever explain to you why he was giving the $5,000 to each of you?
No, he just said this is just a gift. We just want to give you $5,000.
Okay. And as best as you can recall, when did this happen in relationship to your mom's death?
It was I believe it was Easter, or right before,
Shortly before your mom's death.
shortly before my mother's death. It was around that time period, right before. So, it's around
Rachel, I'm going to ask you, we talked earlier today about a conversation you had with your dad on the afternoon of April 11th, 2007, in the master bedroom and then the bathroom,
yes,
okay? He wanted to show you something.
yes.
What did he want to show you?
Oh, he found my mother.
And where did he find your mother?
He said Ada found my mother. He found, and he went into the bathroom and
Did he describe specifically how he found your mother?
yes, he demonstrated and was very adamant that we, step by step, he went by about everything that happened.
Okay, do you recall what he said step by step?
Yes, he said that Ada had gone in. He brought Ada home from school. Ada had gone in and found my mother and called to him, that he went in and found my mother in a position that he then showed us.
Okay. Did he say what happened next, as far as step by step?
Well,
He showed you how she was found?
yes, he walked in, I mean, he was in the bathroom and then just went into the tub to show, bent over. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Just show how she was.
May the witness demonstrate this, Your Honor?
She may. Please step down.
Rachel, I'm going to help you out with a little bit of orientation. Okay. Maybe stand about right here just so the jury can see. This is a replica bathtub of the tub that was in your parents' home in Pleasant Grove. This sticker here represents approximately where the faucet would have been. Did your father show you how he found Michelle? He demonstrated
He
in the
went-
tub that day.
Yes, I was standing at the door.
Okay.
Rex was there as well. He went over. He went like this and said that he found her with her legs sticking out.
Okay. Did he describe what she faced down?
Yeah.
Did he describe how much of her body was inside the tub?
He said that she was inside the tub with her legs sticking out of it. I mean, you go all the way down. Do you want me to, was that
No,
what you're
that's
asking
okay.
me to do?
That's okay. You can retake your seat.
Okay, thank you.
Did he say anything about water being inside the tub?
Yes.
What did he say about that?
He said that my mother was under
What was
water.
that?
He said that her head, that she was under the water,
Okay.
her feet sticking out, her legs.
Did he describe what he did upon finding your mom like that?
He said that he couldn't lift her out.
He could not lift her out, he said?
Yeah, so he said he had to get a neighbor's.
Okay. Did he say anything more that you remember about the event?
He said that she must have fallen or hit her head, or, I mean, he was just, and kept repeating that the autopsy needed to be done and things like that. It was just, I didn't want to listen to any of what, my mother just died, and he just even showing me and talking about the autopsy constantly, it was horrible. I didn't want to know. And my mom and I was concerned about my family, and I didn't want to hear all that.
Okay. I'm going to ask you just one more question about that. Did he describe what she was wearing when he found your mom?
He said that she was just that she didn't have her, that she just had a garment top on
Okay. And nothing else?
and nothing else. Oh, that made me.
Okay. Just going to need some exhibits marked, Your Honor.
Very good. Can you show it to Mr. Spencer, please? Counsel, will you approach while he's doing that? Marked these exhibits.
I haven't. I will right now, Your Honor.
Go ahead. You may. Go ahead.
Rachel, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 36, 37, and 38. Do you recognize what those are?
My mother's.
They're your mother's? And what are they?
That's what I washed of hers.
That's what you washed of hers? Can you describe what they are?
It's her
First looking at
running.
number 36, okay? So describe 36, then 37, then 38.
This is garment. This is 30.
Let's look
36
at number
first?
36 first, yes.
Okay.
If you would like to open it up, I do have some gloves if you'd like to.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, gosh, it's cool.
You recall what that is, Rachel? It looks like it's been cut. Do you recall what that is?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's my mother's.
Okay. Is it a shirt?
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Is that a shirt? Is that a top?
It's yes, but it's, I just called it a running.
Okay.
She just put on little outfits that
how
are
would
her
you
running.
Okay. So it's part of a running outfit?
That's what, yeah.
Okay. And did you find that on April 11th, 2007?
Yes.
And where did you find that?
In the big bloody mess of everything that was thrown in the garage.
Okay. Will you look at number 37?
Yes.
I'm sorry, do you need to open these?
Oh,
Only if,
well,
You don't need to open them
it's
if,
garments, but I don't. Oh, okay.
thank you, Judge. Does number 30, I think we're 7, does that look familiar to you?
Yes,
Okay, and what is that?
garments.
Okay, and who do those garments belong to?
My mother.
Okay, and did you find that on April 11th, 2007?
Yes.
And where did you find that?
And the big pile of everything that was thrown in the garage, the bloody towels and the stuffed animal and the.
Okay. Lastly, turn to 38. Do you recognize what that is?
It's bra. It's my mother's bra.
And did that belong to your mother?
Yes.
And where did you find that?
And the pile of bloody everything of hers.
Okay. Are these the clothes that you decided to wash?
Yes, I wanted to keep everything of my mother's. Yes.
Okay. And then you turned those over to law enforcement?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I put them in a bag.
Your Honor, the state offers 36, 37, and 38.
37, 36, I'm sorry. 36, 37, and 38
Is that fine? Yes. Yeah, that's correct, Your Honor.
are received. Could you collect them, give them to the clerk, please?
Taking you back to the temple, the American Fork Temple, when you were introduced, or when Gypsy Wells walked up,
Yes.
did your father describe how he knew her? Or did he describe how he came to know her?
When he was asking her name, he said, "Oh, I recognize you." And she said, "Oh, I work with you at Shopco, I believe." Or he worked he worked a lot of different jobs. And so that she worked with him.
Okay.
I think it was.
Do you recall how Gypsy was dressed when you saw her at the temple that day?
I really don't remember exactly. I'm sorry.
Okay. Was she in her Sunday best, so to speak, or was it something else?
Well, she looked like she was going to go into the temple, but I never saw her go in. She came and talked to us and then went into her car, so that was
Okay.
bizarre.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor. Forward.
Thank you. You may cross.
Will we take a lunch break at this point, or?
Well, let me ask, we didn't get started till about 11. Would you like to keep going right now? Sounds like yes, so.
We do have a little setup for this.
You need a minute to get ready. Why don't we take about a 10-minute break and then we'll come back. Please keep in mind my prior admonition to you. Don't form or express any opinion about the case. Have no discussions amongst yourselves or anyone else about any subject of the trial. Avoid television, internet, radio, news coverage. Do no research on your own. Court's in recess.